episode 3 of Tales of Crisis with your host tonight, Martin and Swaffield, and with me as always is Chalmers. Good evening, Chalmers.
Good evening.
And
how's it going? I'm not too bad, thank you. And yourself?
Not too bad. Been busy. Lots of new things coming out on Marvel Crisis Protocol to keep us all fully occupied.
Yeah, keeps the bank balance healthy.
Yes, nice and low.
A nice healthy low number.
Yeah. Struggling to work my way through a massive backlog of grey plastic, but getting there. So in tonight's episode, we're going to talk about tournaments on TTS, leagues, and the team tournament we did earlier. So we've got special guest Tom Carrot, who's going to come in and talk about that. But before we get into that, a couple of updates as to what we've been up to from since last time we spoke. So, Chalmers, what have you been up to?
I've been buying and painting lots of models. I've now that Star-Lord is finally back in stock in the UK.
Hooray!
For the first time in 9 months or whatever it is.
Feels like since I've started looking for him way back when, yeah.
So now that I've bought him, I actually own, bar the construction set, terrain set, every single box set of MCP.
Excellent.
Been heavily spending the last few weeks.
Seems like a perfectly valid attempt to get the full collection. I'm quite a way behind. I think I worked out the other day I've bought more than half the packs available, but I do have both mats though. That's the one thing I'm ahead of you on. And whilst you've been painting, you've been recording.
I have been. I've been doing quite a few painting videos for our YouTube channel. So I'm doing a kind of painting protocol series. We're up to episode, well, by the time this comes out, episode 6 will be out on the Wednesday it's just been. So I've done so far Hulk, Magneto, Beast, Ultron, Kingpin and Ghost Spider. But I have been recording lots to kind of set up for future episodes as well. So on top of that, I have, I'm trying to think now, Daredevil, MODOK, Green Goblin, Doctor Strange, Punisher. I think that might be all of them at the minute. There might be one more. No, I think that's probably about all of them at the minute. So all of those are coming. But yeah, I'm kind of planning to try and do as many as I can really in between. I'm kind of trying to do the painting videos that I want to do rather than forcing myself to paint some of them. And then the other models I'm just painting as and when. We're about not to the greatest of ability, but still to a decent tabletop, and just get them kind of done and dusted. Yeah, outside of that, I've kind of painted. I'm trying to think who else I've done. She-Hulk, Wasp, Venom, Groot, Toad, Miles Morales. So yeah, quite a few. I think I'm 22 out of 64 characters I've painted so far.
Very impressive. You've been painting less than half the time I have, and you've done more than double I have. I think I've finally managed to get 11 painted.
That's still not bad. I mean, you know me, I'm always kind of speedily painting through.
Yeah.
But I mean, I started, when was it? Mid-January, 11th of January is when I painted up Dr. Octopus, who was the first character I painted.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Flying through them. And yeah, absolutely. Go check them out. So what's the YouTube channel called?
So it's Tales of Wargames. So it's our kind of main hub from the Tales of podcast. But yeah, if you just search for Tales of Wargames, we'll put a link in the podcast or something in the description below.
The show notes.
And if you're listening to it on YouTube, then you know whereabouts it is anyway.
Yep. Yeah, because we put all our podcasts up on there.
How about yourself?
I was going to say, talking of podcasts, perfect little segue there. I've kicked off a new little series of mini crisis. So these are just mini episodes aiming to be between about 10 and 20 minutes. And these are aimed at beginners and people just getting their heads around the game, breaking down specific areas. So far we've done the power phase, and the latest one was around special conditions. So just kind of breaking it down, going into a fair bit of detail on them, and some tips and hints and tips as to what you can do with those to try and improve your game. So yeah, likewise, again, go check those out. Hopefully they're useful to everybody. Say I've been painting what feels like forever Kingpin. I got him I think he's about halfway done now, but very slow. I finished.
Very nice, though.
Thank you very much. Who did I finish earlier? I finished Venom. That was another painful one. Doing black it isn't the easiest, and I've gone from Venom to Kingpin, so I'm going from black to a lovely white suit.
White, yeah.
And then next up is Taskmaster, who's got, again, bit of black, bit of white, and some orange. So, really going for the easy colours. And then next to him is actually Punisher for another bit of black again. So
it's something that I've noticed after painting, like I said, 20 odd models. You are overpainting lots of black, lots of white, lots of red, or lots of green, it feels like, or purple. That seems to be the other colour that seems to be...
Yep, purple's a very popular Marvel colour, isn't it?
Yeah, so between those colours, I mean, I'm a bit like you. I hate painting black and I hate painting white, and yet I did a whole entire Kingpin in a full white suit, and I was like, what am I doing here? Like...
It's definitely challenging, and I'm really enjoying it because you do get to challenge yourself on a specific model, and you don't have to stick to the same palette for every single one. You get to kind of, once you've finished one, you literally rip up the palette and start again, and you can do whatever you want. So it is liberating. I'm currently reading the Taskmaster, a little mini series of comics on Taskmaster at the moment, and I noticed he doesn't look anything like he does on the box art, so I'm now kind of torn as to where I'm going with him. But no, it's definitely an interesting challenge doing some of these, but as I say, I find it quite liberating.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's nice because you can take a bit of time just doing one model, knowing that you've not got another unit of 30 coming from our AOS background. The one thing I used to always hate is like, right, I need to paint this model, and I've got to do exactly the same thing for the next 30 models to fill this one unit.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's like, right, let's paint this dude. It's because I'm trying to get everything primed. I've got like the last batch of like the Inhumans and that's on the desk now, and the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I need to get them primed, but they're all in the cabinet. Everything else is all primed, and it's quite nice to just go, right, what do I fancy painting now? And it's like a completely different model to the model that you've just painted. So everything feels fresh, which is nice.
Absolutely. In some other news, we are now on the Across the Bifrost Nexus. If you haven't been on before, I do highly recommend it. It is set up by the people that run the Across the Bifrost podcast. So that's Pat and TT. Great guys, and they've set up a website which is acrossthebifrost.com, and on there they've collated a number of different podcasters, streamers. There's a load of YouTube videos on there as well, so we're on there now. So again, you can go check us out from there, and as you grow through your journey on Marvel Crisis Protocol, feel free to go check out some of the other contributors. There's a wealth of knowledge in there of all angles for all different levels, so be sure to check that out. And we kind of touched on it just before, but we in the UK are starting to get ready, or starting to think about getting ready, potentially maybe playing in real life.
You almost sounded like Boris Johnson then. Potentially, maybe, it could happen, it could not.
We might be playing in real life within the next 2 to 3 months, and one of the things we've started to see is a few, not as many as I would like yet, but a few tournaments starting to get advertised, and one in particular that caught my eye that I just wanted to touch on was Dr. Norbert, who has been running a number of the TTS leagues, has put a post up on Facebook about potentially running something at the London GT, which I've heard about before from a Games Workshop perspective, because there's a number of the systems there that were represented, and there were a lot of options on that pack, and it looks like they're trying to do a number of different things. And for us, it seemed different because we're very used to large scale tournaments for the likes of Age of Sigmar, 40k, etc. Whereas this seemed to have a slightly different slant to it. What were your initial thoughts on it all?
To be honest, I was a little bit overwhelmed. Not in a bad way. It's just like you said, AOS. You sign up for an event, and it's literally right. I mean, the ones that we normally do. It's a weekend event, 5 games, 2,000 points. Crack on. There you go. This, like, I was reading this going, oh, okay. So there's qualifier brackets here. There's casual play. There's ultimate encounters. There's a co-op event, and that's like on one day, and then it's repeated
Yep.
again on the next day, and then it's like finals and a league and that on the day after. So I quite like it. I like the idea of all of these different kind of formats. I think it kind of offers something for everyone. My only worry is because there are so many events, is how it translates to like newer players, and like whether they're going to feel a bit put off by too many different things. Of kind of going, what do I want to do, the comp, or do I want to do casual, or like how do I want to kind of play this? Because I mean, it's what, 10 hours long the Friday? Yeah, 10 hours on the Friday,
Yeah.
14 hours on the Saturday, which is extremely long for an event.
It is, and then I think the objective is to have it so that people can drop in and out on bits and pieces. I think where I found it interesting was around, as you mentioned, it tends to be 5 games through. You start with a big field and you narrow it down. It's not that it's knockout, but you kind of rise to the top as such. Whereas this seemed to be 2 sets of qualifiers and a finals for the competitive side of it all, which was really interesting because that's not something that we've seen particularly in the systems that we've played in the past, where it's been one day is a 3-game tournament. I think it was 4-game in fact. The next day is a 4-game tournament, but obviously you don't do both. And then the last day you get everybody together and they finish off at the end. So I'm intrigued to see how that pans out as a format. I'm also interested to see, it was interesting that the first 2 qualifiers were in what I class as normal play, so straight out the book play.
Yeah.
Whereas the finals was, I think it was the Battle Realm format where you
Battle
do.
Realm format, yeah.
Yeah. So where you're doing where you can block certain choices of your opponent. And again, there was an interesting thread on there around, we don't really know what the standard is going to be because AMG have said that this isn't a competitive game, and it doesn't look like at the moment they're planning to have a competitive format or say one way or the other. It's going to be interesting to see which format rises out of all of this when we start playing tournaments and events. It is the go-to format. I've assumed at the moment it is the straight out of the book one, but there does seem to be a feeling within the community that actually the Battle Realm might be a better format for tournaments. So for those that are unsure what we're talking about, if you go to atomicmassgames.com/rules and then scroll most of the way down, there is 2 different formats, Arena and Party, and Battle Realm is from the Arena format. And for those that are unsure, essentially you start with 15 models each, or 15 models/gems each, and you pick one, your opponent picks one, then your opponent gets to you then dismiss one of your opponents, your opponent dismisses one of yours, then you both recruit 2, then you dismiss 3, and then you recruit 2, dismiss 2, recruit 2, dismiss 1, recruit 1. And it's meant to give your opponent a chance to veto certain characters. So if there are certain characters, MODOK is one of the ones that people always talk about that everybody hates. If you look at what you've got and think you're going to struggle to deal with MODOK, then unless he's the first one your opponent selects, then you can block him as such. You can make your opponent dismiss him, which is really interesting. I think the biggest concern with this is around low volume affiliation. So for example, Web Warriors, they've only got 4 in their affiliation. If you come along, well, they've got 5 now with Daredevil, but still, if you come along and start blocking them, you're really reducing the options
what you
they've
can
got.
run.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out. Absolutely. But yeah, that was the view for the end, and that was because they I think he wanted a different challenge for those that had got through the qualifiers, so that it kind of pulled the best of the best of the best out, as opposed to just somebody who
Flipped it.
managed to just pick a good roster of 10 and was able to dominate the event from that, which again I can see. But yeah, I thought it was interesting because the few that I'd seen advertised over the summer before we went into lockdown 3 or whatever it was seemed to just be doing a single day format, and there's been one already advertised, which unfortunately is a bit too far for us. I don't think we're going to make that one. And again, that single day, I think it's 4 games. Whereas the one for the London GT, I wonder whether that's a sign of things to come when we talk about weekends, and whether or not actually that's the way they're going to go it, or whether or not they're just going to do maybe six game weekends or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to do it like this a lot of the time, because not many people can have a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. Well, they can have Saturday, Sunday off, but having the Friday off as well kind of hampers quite a few people, I think, like
Yes.
work-wise. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how it will work. I mean, the fact that you've got 24 players for bracket A and 24 players for bracket B. I'm assuming you can only take part in one of them, or
Again, I'm not too sure, and I think that's the thing. I assume you'll only be able to get into one. You'll do one or the other, so you'll do either the Friday or the Saturday. And I suppose the thing there is you do the Friday, let's say, and that means on the Saturday you can do something different, and then you'll know whether or not you need to be there on the Sunday, or you can do again something different on the Sunday.
yes.
Yeah.
So for the casual league on a Sunday, it's a Infinity War 3-round league. That's like unlimited players, so everyone else that doesn't qualify can just go into a league and play 3 rounds, like a kind of normal tournament as such. So I mean that's quite nice. I'm quite interested in doing this. I know you are as well.
Yeah.
My only worry is that if you can only do one of the brackets, and say we turned up on the Friday and did bracket A, and then on the Saturday you're kind of limited to Ultimate Encounters Open playing co-op, and it's like, well, like there's only so many of them you can play, if you know what I mean, rather than having an actual normal event.
Absolutely, and I think it might be because it is it's not just a standalone event. If we weren't in a year of coming out of COVID, it's the kind of thing where I would say we'll go down, we'll do the Friday one, then the Saturday we can do a couple of games of MCP, but we can also wander around and see some of the Age of Sigmar games. I know in the previous GTs they've done a number of things. I'm not sure I particularly want to this year, like wander around on different things. But again, it's the concept of that I think is quite appealing. But yeah, it's where we. It's going to be an interesting year to see where the community finds what it wants to do with regard to events and how they want to run them. There's a number of formats now that are an option. There are the games. I'm not sure, again, until we start doing it, whether 4 games is more feasible. It felt, again, the board in Brum one we talked about before was doing 4 games on a one-dayer. It did look pretty jam-packed, but again, it felt like it's a lot easier to pack up your 5 or 6 models and tokens than it is
it's actually like you've got
giant
a massive army to...
Yeah, absolutely. Game finishes, you're straight into the next one. Maybe you have a 5-minute break and a quick swig of Coke or something, but it's
Coca-Cola. Let's get that straight.
Pepsi for those. It's something where I think maybe it is a little bit faster paced than, I wouldn't say AOS is clunky, but it's difficult to move around quickly on
Yes.
something like AOS when you've got so many models. Whereas this, I can see maybe that's something. So the concept of getting 4 games in is quite appealing because it means that you can actually do a one-dayer with more people rising to the top. You know, you can have more people in there for understand who gets away from a win. You know, with 3-game tournament, it feels like as soon as you get more than 20 people, you end up with a load of people. And the one thing I struggle with on this game is how do we differentiate those that are on, say, 3 wins at the end of a day? You know, it's at the moment strength of schedule seems to be the primary solution for it, but I personally have issues with strength of schedule. I'm not never convinced it's the right answer.
I don't like strength of schedule because you can never guarantee who you're going to play game 1, and that can always like screw you over massively. Like if you play someone who then goes on to lose every single game, then you can have a smaller strength of schedule, and that's nothing against like your opponent, but it's not exactly fair for yourself if like
it's not. And it's interesting because you then start to look at, well, what are the alternatives? Do you do it on victory points? Well, if you do it on victory points, then it encourages, it's that scenario where first game up, so you want to win the tournament, right? That's your aim, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I know some people look down on it, but if that's your aim, so be it. You rock up, you want to do the best you can, you're aiming to win the tournament. Game 1, you're playing against somebody who's just rocked up for a bit of fun. Maybe they've played 2 or 3 games, don't really know the rules. Like, what do you do in that situation? In strength of schedule, you look at it and go, it's out of my control, right? They're probably not going to do very well, but all I can do is win the game. But you can have a fun game, you don't need to crush them, etc. If it's victory points, then you look at this and go, I could get, I was going to say 20-0 then, I could get, but I mean, you could easily get 18, 19, 2 or 3 if you properly crush somebody on this. It's definitely doable. But then that's no fun for your opponent. That's not something that you want to encourage. So if you don't do strength of schedule and you don't do victory points,
what do you do?
What do you do? And it is a tough one because I don't see draws coming up in this very often. I think I've played in probably 30, 40 games now, and I think I've had 1 draw. So it is going to be interesting to see again how do we as a community start to get those differentiators. Saw something the other day talking about strength of schedule and second strength of schedule, which I must admit kind of baffled me, the maths of it all. But yeah,
it's done. You can do it on Tabletop TO. It looks at your direct opponents, but then also everyone else that the others have played as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it kind of says, well, actually, what's the strength for the people that your strength people you've played?
Yeah.
Where I know I've confused myself already, but I've seen it happen before, and I think that is a little bit better because then it does kind of help you with, like you said, if you rock up game 1 against someone who's completely new and is going to go on to potentially lose 3 games in a row, then you can kind of help yourself a little bit there. But you almost need I was going to say a 20-0 system, but that won't really work.
No, and I can see the argument the other way as well in that, let's say you and I turn up to an event, I play a complete beginner, and then I play in round 1, I then play somebody in round 2 who is, okay-ish, but they played it out complete beginner in their first round. And so I beat them, and then we get to the final, and I get a difficult game in the final, but I managed to win it. I've only really been tested in 1 game, say. You rock up and you get drawn round 1 against last year's winner, shall we say, somebody, an experienced person, right? You manage to get through that, well done. Then you get another person who normally is winning all their games, you manage to beat them. Then you're playing against somebody who's already 2-0, they're clearly going to be pretty good. You beat them. Who of the 2 of us deserves it more? You do. And strength of schedule will get you it. Is it, have I done anything wrong? No, but you've clearly had the harder route to that point, in which case, there is an element that says you deserve it more. But it's, again, it's one of those ones where there isn't a right and wrong on it, and it is so tough to get it to that point where you get it. And I notice as well on the TTS leagues and TTS tournaments, rarely do people talk about, oh, this person came first. It's generally, these people all went 3-0.
Sure.
And it's just seen as they're all more or less equal. Yes, strength of schedule will put one above the other two, but it's just seen as in general.
These are the top,
Yeah.
top players.
And obviously, when you get in real life, hopefully, we'll start to see things like sportsmanship, painting, points, those kind of things. But again, they're things that you should be able to get if you put the effort in. So yeah, it's one definitely to keep an eye on.
Definitely.
Okay. Then lastly, breaking news: Domino has been revealed.
Yes, she has.
So
I was
going to say we're recording on the 16th of March. So she's literally been revealed in the last hour and a half.
She looks pretty tasty.
She does indeed.
She looks pretty good. I'm quite liking the X-Force at the minute. They don't look bonkers, but they look kind of quite tasty. So
yeah, I'm not a big fan of her model, but the rules itself. So yeah, she's solid for a 3 threat. So she's 5 health on both sides, medium mover, 3 defense across the piece, automatic pistol as her builder, which is, and I think this is the somewhat controversial one in the chats we've been in so far, in that although it's a builder, it automatically gains you 1 power, which has pros and cons. Range 3 for strength, so nothing to write home about. But again, as we say, it does give you the automatic 1 power, whether you do damage or not. And it does trigger a wild on, I believe it's a hit, though it's very hard to see from this picture.
Yeah, it looks like a hit.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because the automatic pistols are exactly the same stats as the automatic pistol that Black Widow has.
Yep.
But she's just got built-in or rapid fire.
Yes, and I think that's the key difference. So that really does give her the edge, and allows you to do things like widow bombs, where you can stack it all up, and you're getting that essentially you can do 4 sets of
shots at someone.
Into somebody. Whereas here you may or may not get them, but still, there's a potential there to get a guaranteed 2 power, even if you don't do any damage from that with a rapid fire. I do like grenade bounce. From just a pure Domino perspective, the fact that she throws this grenade, it takes a lucky ricochet and lands exactly where she wants it.
Yeah.
Again, range 4 for strength, cost of power, ignores line of sight, and they don't benefit from cover. But the key one here for me is incinerate. So it hands out incinerate, and it doesn't even say that they needs to do damage.
No, it's just after it's resolved, you gain incinerate, which kind of makes sense because even if you've managed to dodge the grenade, it's still going to be an explosion around you, I suppose. So. Yep.
And again, talking about special conditions, as I mentioned in the mini crisis I did, for me, guaranteeing being able to give out special conditions can be a massive.
Yes.
You've got a big threat character there that you need to get rid of. Being able to go first with Domino and give them incinerate guaranteed, that's massive. And also if they're bunched up, so if you roll a wild before damage is dealt, other enemy characters within 2 suffer 1 damage. It's a nice little bonus. Then we've got her spender, lucky shot, another great phrase for her. So this one is interesting. So it's range 3, so she's got 2 range 3s and a range 4, so she's not having to get up close and personal all the time. It's 6 strength, so not too bad, and it's 3 power, so not excessively expensive.
No.
The target character does not gain power for damage dealt by this attack. I think Big. Yep.
Yeah.
Very much so. Being able to, and I talked about this in, again, the mini crisis on power. One of the things that is often a struggle is you want to do some damage to somebody, but you know that you're going to end up giving them power for it, so you perhaps don't bother with it. With this, being able to do that and know that you can, yes, it's 3 power, so it's not an easy one to get off, but if you can get the power to do it, knowing that you can do some damage and not have to worry about them gaining any power would be quite big, especially if you manage to get a grenade bounce in first, incinerate them, reduce one of their defense dice, then do this. That could be quite useful. And it after the attack, so again on the wild, after the attack you gave them stun, which is always nice.
Definitely. No, it's a nice kind of group of attacks there. It's a lot of the range attacks, but yeah, I think she'll be quite nice to kind of just go in and, like you said, pop on some incinerate and then just blast away and kind of see what happens. I just don't know with the automatic pistols why rapid fire has to be a hit or a wild on for that one when Black Widow has it automatically, but it's a bit of a weird one, but it's just one to try and remember when you're doing it.
Yeah, and I suppose you do get 2 hits on a D8, so you've got a 1 in 4 chance of doing it with 4 dice.
Yeah.
Nothing's guaranteed in dice rolls, but you've got a good chance of getting it. But like you say, it's something you've got to bear in mind because it's not always going to come off. And if you're sat there planning for, I can get off an extra shot there, or especially if she's desperate for power, and you're hoping to get that second shot more to get her extra power necessarily than give your opponent do any damage to your opponent, that could be quite frustrating.
Yeah.
She's got a couple of superpowers as well. First one, probability manipulation. Now, this is a reactive superpower. I was a little disappointed with this one. So, after the character rolls attack, defense, or dodge, so it's good that it's including the dodge because a number of these don't always include dodge. But before the resolving critical step, it may spend any amount of power to use the superpower. For each one power spent, the character may treat one skull as a crit for the remainder of the attack. A little disappointed in that. I would have liked it just to be flat rerolls.
I don't know. Like, if you roll your dice, cause it's after you've rolled the dice, so you know what you get. I mean,
Yep.
It's not often that you roll skulls, but if you suddenly have that awful roll where that's you go, right, I need like at least 2 hits or 3 hits, and you know what your opponent's got as well.
Yeah.
And if you know that they've not got any like rerolls or anything, and you go, right, actually, if I spend 3 power here, I can turn those 3 skulls into 3 crits, and I know I'm going to do the damage to daze them, then I think it's worthwhile.
And it's important as to when it happens as well, because it is before the resolve critical step. So normally rerolls and modified dice happens after that.
Yes.
So in this one, you will be able to turn those skulls into crits and get your extra dice, which is.
I read. God, you can tell I've been out working all day. I read that and just went, "Oh right, okay, they've put that in because it then stops you getting the extra crits." Completely forgetting that before is before and not after.
That English language is really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean that's even bigger. Like I love that, and that does play into a whole lucky stance that, like for all of us that roll skulls lots, that actually no, make it a crit and get an extra dice roll and see what happens. So I like it.
Yeah, I as I was reading it, I was just expecting it just to be a flat reroll, and then I was just like, oh, okay, turns into crits. And then when you dig into it, it is powerful, and like you say, it means that she's not a character that is likely to be sat on a lot of power, and it means you're only using power when you need to. You're not necessarily going, all right, with the rerolls, you could expect to be wanting to necessarily reroll dice quite often. So you're like, oh, I want to spend some power here, spend some power there. But like you say, this is only in a certain set of circumstances, and it guarantees you when you do spend that power that you not only you get a success, but you get success with a potential extra success. So I can see that side of it. And then we've got an innate superpower. Things tend to go my way. When this character is attacking or defending, enemy characters do not roll additional dice for crit results in their attack or defense rolls. So again, that's big.
Yes.
Stop spikes, which will
Yeah.
help keep her alive. I mean, she's got 3 defense across the piece, 5 health on each side. Not bad for a 3 threat, but it's not something you'd necessarily want to write home about. But yeah, I think there's that will help keep her alive. And when she's doing her attacks, especially if she gets that lucky shot off, it's going to stop the receiving character from necessarily blocking more than their core dice.
Yeah.
Yes, they might get successes on all 3 dice, but they're not going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to get more than the number of dice they're rolling, which is one of the things you can do quite often on MCP with the crits. Sometimes you roll 2 dice and think, I'm never going to block anything here, and you get 2 crits. Oh, hang on. All of a sudden, I'm rolling 2 and you're rolling 6. Didn't look good, but now I've got 4 successes and you've rolled 4 as well. Yeah, happy days.
Yeah, it's just those nice things. And we have forgotten that obviously X-Force get to re-roll 1 attack dice, so it's not too bad. It's like it's an extra bit of not protection, but kind of extra bit of help for Domino as well. So
if she goes in there, but you never know where she's going to go, do you? Because I can see her cropping up in a number of places. I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I can see her in Humans, to be honest. Bit of power manipulation there,
Anyone can go into Inhumans. They've got a Medusa and Lockjaw. They can just take whoever they want after that.
Yeah, but no, I think she's going to be a character that I can see fit into a number of rosters.
Yes,
the 3 threat it's a hard one to get into. There's a lot of 3 threat characters out there, but I can see her popping up in a few.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're going to head on into the interview now with Tom around events, tournaments, and leagues on TTS. So welcome back, and we're now joined by Thomas Carrott. Welcome, Thomas.
Good evening, Martin. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, and how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Excited to talk Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Excellent. So, do you want to do a little introduction about yourself and a bit about your history in wargaming and how you ended up on MCP?
Absolutely. So I got into wargaming, probably a fairly typical story. Started high school, met some obviously new friends. Some of them were into this odd thing called Warhammer, and was interested at first, and found out a bit about Space Marines and Orcs and Warhammer Fantasy and stuff. And anyway, ended up going to a Games Workshop shop. My mum took me, and I left with a Bretonian battle force. Absolutely loved it. Me and my mates at school had a great time with. And then, kind of, I guess the usual thing happened. Sixth form, university, and such. Just never deliberately stopped, but ended up taking a break. And then I actually got back into the hobby as I was finishing my degree, largely as a stress thing for painting. I just wanted to start painting again, just to used to find it relaxing, and so got into AOS, and then moved back to Newcastle, or near Newcastle where I'm from. Started coming to Warlords as I got more and more into AOS. Then obviously COVID came. We had our group chats of things, and some of us started playing AOS on TTS. It was a game with you, September, on TTS. We had a game of AOS, and it was, the usual pretty clunky thing.
Yep.
I think you said, do you want to try this new game, Marvel Crisis Protocol? And I thought, yeah, go on, that'll be, good fun. Love the...
Little did you know how it would end up.
Take over, yes. I think we've got half the club playing it now, haven't we?
Yep.
Mostly you, but little bits from me as well. Love the films, the bits of the comics that I have read, really love those. I thought the models looked good. It was interesting to see some things at a slightly bigger scale. Thought that might be fun for painting. I have also played quite a bit of Warhammer Underworld, so I like a sort of tighter, more sort of skirmish-based game every now and then. And playing it on TTS was a complete sort of a change, wasn't it? To 4 to 6 models most of the time, usually 4 to 6 models.
Yeah.
Where you've got a brilliant mod that kind of makes learning the game so easy. I genuinely think it is easier probably to learn MCP on the TTS mod than it would be real life in person, whatever. And just fell in love with it. I was playing Avengers to begin with. We definitely had some close games. I think probably on balance you won more. I think Avengers, yeah.
Yeah,
I love the Avengers.
A steep learning curve. I suppose Avengers seems to be the one you go in on, but I think I was using Asgard at the time,
and then X. You started playing
X-Men
when they came out.
Yeah.
Which again, I mean, I don't think they're the best, but yeah, Avengers, they're not the strongest, are they? I think that's putting it charitably. But I had a blast pushing around Cat, Black Widow, Black Panther, and Thor, and just using some superpowers, and it's such an addictive game. I think it scratches so many different itches, but it's got so many different elements. That small, close tactical combat, the power management, the superpowers, it's just brilliant. Really fun game. So thank you for getting me into it.
Well, thank you for being my initial partner in crime on this, because you're right. We had that game and I said, well, let's try this, because I'd played 1 or 2 games in real. Actually, I only played the 1 game in real life, and I wanted to try it on TTS. I'd played a couple of people on TTS, but we'd failed pretty miserably because TTS wasn't. I had a new laptop and I couldn't get it to work, and it was very much like, right, I need to find a way to get this to work. And we started playing. We did Marvel Mondays, and I think for a good 2 or 3 months we probably played every Monday. We started off, I think the first couple of games it was just we pre-picked the models, we did a lot of the stuff, and then bit by bit introduced elements. And I think we'd probably played a good 5 or 6 games before we actually had the full, select 10 characters, full 8 cards, full 6 crisis cards, the full way of doing it. We gradually got ourselves into it, which I thought, again, because there was no pressure of getting up to speed anytime soon, because we were the only people we really knew playing it, we were able to get to that point. And I think anybody who's starting out, unless you've got somebody who can talk you through it, if you and a friend or a group of friends are all starting out, then it's probably the best way to start is take it slow. Don't try and do the full whack to start with. Get to grips with the basics and go from there. So after a few games or a few months of us starting to get our heads around it all, I had joined the Discord channel, and I think you joined later on as well, and noticed that they were doing these 1-day tournaments, and I threw myself into the one in November, and off the back of that I said to you, do you fancy doing the next one in December? And we both went to that.
We did.
Since then we've then joined the league, and we've also done a team tournament which you were captain for, a very successful
was indeed.
Captain.
Thank you very much. You were our most successful player. So,
I couldn't have done it without the captain. And on the episode, we just want to quickly cover off those 3 different things: our experiences, how we found them, what we would recommend for others. And I've noticed that they're constantly challenging themselves for how they organise things going forward, and I think there's some changes afoot, but just based on what we had done. So let's start with the 1-dayers. Your initial thoughts on the initial 1-dayer that you did, as somebody who probably at that point had only really played against me.
Yeah, I'd only played you, and funnily enough, guess who I was drawn against game 1?
Oh yeah, we did, didn't we?
That martinswaffield. Yes, it was. It was round 1. I mean, there weren't loads of players. I can't remember how many there were in it. 20, 30.
Yeah,
but,
there wasn't.
The odds of us being drawn first round must have been pretty low. I can remember that game actually because I tried something. I ran Avengers for that one day in December, and I'd already decided that as much as I love the Avengers, I wasn't having huge fun playing them as a tactical experience just because of the limitations that they have. Great for a casual game, but less so for sort of that more competitive tournament style play. But I thought I'll just stick with what I'm familiar with rather than trying to rush myself into learning something new when I'm still quite new to the game. And I took Thanos thinking he could actually work quite well. You know, you've got Death Decree, which you can do every turn to buff someone. Obviously, Cosmic Portal's only one power on his turn. Give it a go. You know, should be interesting. In that first game, I think it was Herbs. Yes, it was. Because I took Thanos thinking I had this clever plan with Cosmic Portal and things. Just realised it didn't work because of him being 6 threat, Cap being 4 threat, and then suddenly you've got basically nothing left to spend on other characters. But had a great time. The whole day was great fun. Second game I was against Brotherhood, which was my first time playing against Brotherhood, and it was pretty brutal.
It's an eye-opener when you first play them, isn't it?
He was, yeah. And also it was on probably one of the worst boards to play against him because there was loads of size 4 terrain, which obviously Magneto can throw. It meant that I was taking loads, and Cap was gone round 2 to throws. And, then what little Avengers do you have just completely falls apart. But, great opponent and definitely learned lots, including not to save Brace for too late in the game. That's certainly something I've learned. Don't keep hold on to it thinking there'll be something more important, just use it when it seems right. And then round 3 was Criminal Syndicate.
Yeah, and just going back to that, I think that's a really important point, though. I think one of the things that I think we've both learned over our time is we both try to be really tactical with team tactics cards and being like, oh, right, but actually not necessarily just throwing them at the very first opportunity, but don't be too afraid to use them early on, because very much if you get behind in this game, generally it's a struggle. Rather than like letting your opponent get ahead, and near the end you might have 4 of your 5 tactics cards left. That's great, but unless they're actually going to be able to score you some points, which generally they can't, you don't get points for finishing without using your team tactics cards. So again, that's something that I think we've both learned the hard way.
Oh yeah, definitely. And Brace is one of those, I think, classic examples, because it, especially on like a board where it's mostly size 3 and 2, but then there's that one bit of size 4, and you think, I should save it for when that one bit of size 4 comes at me. But then you end up like never really using it, or using it at a really suboptimal time, when actually you could have saved a character from being dazed or KO'd earlier on. Yeah, definitely, that's it. I think probably one of the most important things to learn about the game, playing it competitively, whatever, knowing when to use the team tactics cards and not holding on to them for too long. And then game 3 was Criminal Syndicate, which was, remember my opponent for that being just really fun opponent. I got Modoc'd, which wasn't especially fun. And I also remember that was the game when I sent 4 into Okoye, and 4 did literally 0 to Okoye, and Okoye then ended up dating 4, which was...
We always remember those kind of moments, don't we?
Not something I expected, shall we say, but it was a great game, really fun. My opponent was a great guy. And I managed to win myself the spoon, which, I was pretty new to the game. I wasn't doing it to compete. I was doing it to have fun, and have fun I certainly did. It was a really great day. So thank you for talking me into going along.
Yeah, and it was. I thoroughly enjoyed the same day, and as I mentioned before, I actually did the November one, and the November one they did slightly differently in that they created a load of pods of 4 people, and everybody in that pod played each other once, and then you kind of just got winners from each pod. For the one we did, they then actually went for a more what I class traditional format, where it was just everybody in a single table, and it worked on strength of schedule. So I played 6 games in total. I won the game against yourself. I drew 1 game in the first day, but lost the rest. And I wouldn't say I'm somebody who constantly wins in AOS, but I'm normally there and able to compete. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and none of the opponents were particularly awkward or going for the kill or kind of it's a really good atmosphere. It's people are you come to these things and say you're new, you're learning. People are very, very quick to be able to help you out. And even though it's classed as a tournament, I didn't find anybody being like, oh, well, you shouldn't have turned up if you weren't ready to go. So yeah, I mean, as I say, first day that I did it, I brought along a Asgard list, which looking at it now was a bit random. It also included Wong, Black Widow, Captain America, and Wolverine, which I'm not really sure what I was thinking back then, but I'm sure there was a perfectly valid reason for it.
See them all but Cap, I think.
And then the next day, one day in the Santa Claus Clash, the one in December, like you said, I won the first game against yourself, and I think on that one I had that was when I ran X-Men. Yeah, so looking at that, that was a more traditional X-Men with Winter Soldier, Valkyrie, Shuri, and Hela added in, which again is an interesting selection of characters. And yeah, we had 21 people on that day, and I finished 14th with 1 win and 2 losses. But again, thoroughly enjoyed it. Managed to play some really good players who showed me the ropes and explained a number of things. And I learned a lot about TTS as well.
Yeah.
I remember on the first one, I came back, the first game we played after I'd played that tournament on the Saturday. On the following Monday, I was like, did you know you could do this, and this? We learned all these shortcuts, and it was like, wow.
Using the number keys to get dice and measurement tools and things. That was, mind blown.
Absolutely. And, even before that, we thought the mod was good. And then you start to go to these things and play people who've played regularly, and you're all of a sudden like, wow. Because I'd spent a lot of the games just saying, how do you do that? How did that happen? And they weren't necessarily MCP things. They made how to use it on TTS.
Yeah.
But yeah, well and truly hooked. I'm actually down to play the one this coming Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. I haven't even decided what I'm running yet, but I know you're unable to. But for those that are unsure on the one-day tournaments, we didn't go into those with a vast amount of experience or knowledge of the game. We went into those pretty green and fully supported by the community. Yeah,
it's a great community, really, really great community. Yeah, say you're new and you'll get nothing but help and friendly advice. Even opponents sticking around at the end of the game to say what you did well, what you could have done better, so on.
Yeah. So then we talked about it, didn't we? And in both those, a lot of the opponents I was playing against were like, "Are you in the league? Are you going to do the league next time?" And this concept kept coming back up. So we decided we would enter into season 4 of the TTS League, which kicked off the start of this year. Again, quickly go through, your experiences of that.
Really good fun. I enjoyed the one-day tournament. I mean, it is a lot, 3 games in one day. So, I mean, the league was great fun just for having that weekly game. Learned a lot, had 6 really fun games. And again, would absolutely recommend it. I ended up finishing 30 out of 61. I won 3 games, lost 3 games. So I met the sort of target I'd set myself of 50-50. And, well, actually, originally my target had been just to win 1 game. But then I won my first game and I was like, right, okay, more seriously, 50-50. Really pleased with that result. I took so for those who don't know, the way the last league worked, I think the leagues before as well, but I'm not sure on that. You have 1 roster for weeks 1 to 3, and then you can make changes to your roster for week 4 to go from there week 4 to week 6. It was a Wakanda roster that I took both times, with some changes for the second one. I'd originally been messing around with a sort of Wakanda Asgard flex. Decided before submitting my first roster properly to just drop 4, not bother trying to run Asgard as well and just concentrate on being Wakanda, but for some reason still had Loki and the Mind Gem in. I think I was kind of thinking, well, Wakanda's got a lot of control elements, so having that extra control could be fun, but the reality is you don't need it. You've got Black Panther's got his push, obviously, Shuri, amazing. I think every game I've run Wakanda, I've run Valkyrie as well. I mean, she's great anyway. I think she really works in Wakanda. She's got her throw, so realistically, you don't need a 5-threat Loki for 1 short advance. But no, that was had some great games with it. I think the first 3, I won the first 2 and then lost the third. And then the week 4 to week 6, I changed it up, dedicated myself properly to Wakanda. For this I took some inspiration from the Zynga Protocol sort of Wakanda Wave idea with some modifications. I was persuaded by that to give Doc Ock a try, and I'm actually really glad I did, because to be honest, in Wakanda I prefer him to Storm for a free threat character. He did what I wanted from a free threat in Wakanda more than Storm did. Having the throw, even though it's a bit hard for him to get the power, it is really handy. And yeah, he does go down quickly, but to be honest, I think Storm goes down quickly once your opponent's in range.
Once you get close to it, yeah.
Exactly. So to be honest, I'm not saying Doc Ock is great or anything like that. He does undoubtedly have real limitations, but I actually liked using him. I thought he was a good fit in my roster.
That's one of the things about the game that I think, is a massive appeal. There's a number of characters that people are quite quick to say, well, they're rubbish. But they crop up in rosters. You can find a way. It's just a toolbox. A lot of these characters are just tools in a toolbox that you can pick and choose. And yes, on the face of it, it might not look like it's a particularly strong character compared to some of the others, but in a particular roster with a particular set of scenarios, with taking into account crisis, etc., some of them actually are the right answer for you. So yeah, I'm a big proponent on this game of never discounting a character completely. They always find something for them, and as the game continually develops and more affiliations are added and more leaders are added to existing affiliations, I think we're going to see it more and more of just this constant rise and fall of a number of characters without actually any of their character cards changing. I see a lot of people saying, oh, this character card needs to change, this needs to change. And actually, maybe it doesn't, and I always come back to Crossbones as the perfect example, completely written off pre-Criminal Syndicate. I never played Criminal Syndicate without him. He's always in my lists. And I think he's going to get even more when Sin comes along, who's going to have synergies with him. So, it never discount them, they fit in well. And, Wakanda is a super strong affiliation, and again proves that some of the original ones, it's not all about the new shiny. Some of those original ones still can hold their own against anything.
Yeah, and I think Asgard's another good example of that. One of the earliest that still has real strength.
Yeah, and they've really benefited from the release of Enchantress and Angela.
Definitely helped them. But it's not just the new shiny, like you say. There is room, and I'm hoping that maybe it'll be Sam Wilson, Captain America will be a new leader for the Avengers.
Give them something different.
Give them something different, because, like I say, I do love the Avengers. They're kind of my favorite. It is my favorite collection of characters. So it'd be great if he or someone else, whoever it was, if they did a new Iron Man or whatever with the leadership, that would be great. Just to try and breathe some new life into them, even if it isn't, hard edge, really strong in competitive play. Just different way to use your models, or digital models, as the case may be, on TTS. But no, the weeks 4 to 6 were again really good. We played each other again. I think it was round 5, wasn't it? And whole league was just a really fun experience. I definitely recommend that anyone does it. When the next league comes up, I was a bit dubious as I entered, thinking, it's quite a big commitment, 1 game a week for 6 weeks. But no, don't regret it at all. So would definitely recommend it.
I would echo that. I went into this similar to yourself. We were already playing once a week. We said that we would continue doing that, and we would then bring the league in. So it meant I was getting at least 2 games a week, and at the time I was keen to do that. And a one day isn't for everybody. Not everybody can commit to having an entire 3 games back to back, sat at a laptop with your family around. It's not easy. So the league definitely gives you an opportunity to get involved in the community, but without having to have such a time sink. Similar to yourself, I went into it and said I'll be happy with 1 win. That was the target.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I lost either my first game or my first two games, and then pulled it back, and I also finished 3-3. But because I started off losing, my strength of schedule was so much lower than yours because the people I was playing against were of the lower tier, and so I finished 38th, whereas you finished 30. And yes, we were both 3-3, but you were a lot higher in that element.
Yeah.
And, looking at the things, I actually scored more victory points and had a better difference of victory points, but because you were playing people that finished higher, you got the higher up. And again, I think Chalmers and I touched on this in the intro around what's the right answer, and I definitely think in the leagues where you've got 6 games, strength of schedule is about right, because I think it rewards people for having played the more difficult people, and it's such a big group that we're not necessarily looking at who finished first. For those that don't know, the top, and I think in this one the top 6, or in fact I think it must have been the top 5 from the European League, went into the knockouts. So again, it's around making sure that you are able to reward the people that have played the more tough opponents. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Had some really great games. Got to play some people that were completely new to the game, and I enjoyed, and it kind of was a bit of the inspiration for doing the mini crisis series that I'm doing at the moment. I enjoyed then being the person who was able to tell them about all the shortcuts, and you do realize this works on. By the way, you don't, what I remember, one of the games was against Guardians, and I think it was his 3rd game total. And Guardians aren't the strongest in the world, and he kind of said up front, I know Guardians aren't very good. I know I haven't played many games, but I'm just here for some fun. And that set the bar to the point where there were a couple of things where I could have just gone all guns blazing, but it was more like, I'll explain this to you. This is what I think. By the way, you do realise you can actually do that, and you're like, oh, can you? All right, fine. And it was a learning experience for them, which was great, and it gave me the opportunity to feel that you were putting a little bit back in, considering how much we'd got from the tournaments. But if the tournament is too much of a time sink, or you're able to do the league, I highly recommend it. You get a real variety of people. There are people in that league who have been there since season 1 and are hardened veterans, and like I say, there are people in there who are either like ourselves, who kind of like have played a few games between ourselves but not really played many games against other people, or even you've got people who are there literally, I think he said he'd played 1 game, and then somebody mentioned the league, and his very second game ever of the game was the first game of the league.
Oh, that's great that he felt able to do that. Yeah.
So, but he was seeing it as he was getting 6 games against 6 different opponents. He didn't have many opponents in his area that he knew personally that could regularly play, and so it gave him that opportunity, which is great. And again, at the time, you and I were tended to be, others were starting to get involved at that point, but we still had a limited number of different affiliations we were playing against, and the league again gave you that opportunity to see how other affiliations worked, or other takes on existing affiliations, which I found really, really interesting and useful.
Oh yeah, and I mean, talking about the top players, I mean, absolutely, and actually my 3rd game was against Utility Cookie. His real life name escapes me, I'm afraid. If you're listening, apologies. But it was one of my, I think, it was possibly kind of my favourite game, just because I learned so much. He was running Black Order, and I kind of went into it knowing I'd lose. It's always a mistake to approach a game like that, but I did, thinking, well, Black Order and Wakanda are both quite killy, especially the way I was running Wakanda in those first 3 weeks was more leaning into sort of the offensive side of Wakanda, and Black Order are just better at that. So I'm definitely on the disadvantage. And I think the game ended up being 15-8, and so he undoubtedly won. He won, very sort of convincing lead. But I was able to stop him from getting to 16, and he taught me so much about different things I could have done, or actually not being quite as scared of that as I thought, but actually being really scared of that thing instead. And it was brilliant for making me a better player. which is the great advantage of the league, because, you know, like you say, it's a real mix of those hardened veterans right through to people who played 3 games total, and it's great that we could all kind of rub along and get along together and have some great games of MCP.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that then led us to others, and I think I had no idea how quickly it would get to the point that it's got to where within our group now everybody's obsessed. But we then decided we could try and convince one of those people to join us in a team tournament.
Indeed we did.
And I must admit that the first few kind of said no, and then Anth decided he was going to join us. And I think at that point, and again, coming back to a running theme here, I'm pretty sure at that point Anth had only played 1 game a week before the tournament, and then he just crammed maybe another 2 or 3 games in before we went into the tournament. But again, hadn't necessarily gone in with that much knowledge in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think coincidentally, he was off, I think, the week before the team tournament, and I had a few days off. So I gave him, I think, a couple of games. I think you gave him 1 or 2, didn't you, that the week before?
Yeah, I gave him a game before as well, yeah.
You know, well, first of all, thank you, Anne, for you know, coming along and meaning that we were able to put up a team. But, I mean, he did really well, I thought, and he enjoyed it, which, or he said he did, which is definitely the main thing. And we did well as a team. I ended up captain. I think between the two of us, we sort of kind of said, do you want to do it? Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it? And I ended up captain because I had a bit more time.
I volunteered you purely based on, at the time I think you were something like 4-1 and I was 2 and
in the league,
3 on the league, and I was like, well, you're clearly doing better than me on the league. And I think it was around the time that we played each other and you beat me in the league, and I was like, right, well, if you're that good, you can you can go and do
this. Given as, you know, personally you won 3 in the team tournament and I only won 2, you could be captain next time.
Well, exactly. It's an honour that we pass around, honestly.
Exactly. We came 5th out of 12 teams, which, you know, great. We won 2 of our rounds and lost the first. My roster was a Black Order Wakanda mix, but I always went Black Order. Kind of knew I was going to go Black Order. I just kind of chucked the Wakandans in just to fill up the roster to 10, and kind of thinking, well, if I'm forced to play 14, then I guess I can always...
Bit of a safety net as well, knowing that you know Wakanda.
Exactly, I knew them. I knew that I would have a Koye in there anyway to run with the Black Order, so, you know, I needed, I think it was 3 other characters, so I thought, I'll just put Black Panther, Killmonger, and Shuri in, and, you know, put Wakanda Forever in, and thought, well, you know, if I end up having to play at 14 or whatever, then I can go for that instead. 3 great games. As captain, I was responsible for the pairings process, which was, I think, a little more complicated than it needed to be, but I know I've already addressed that and said that there's going to be a different system next time, which I definitely prefer. I think that essentially the way it worked was I put the other team captain and me saw each other's rosters, then we rolled off as if it was the start of a game. Whoever won the roll off was red, the other was blue. The red captain put down one of their players on table 1, the other one put down one of their players on table 3. We then switched our remaining players. If I was red, would then put down one of blues against my red on table 1, vice versa, and then whoever was left from each team would go down on table 2. Certainly for the first one, the first draw, the other captain did say, you know, I do know quite what's going on here. And I said, I'm not quite sure of the rules myself either. And we got through it. But I think once you did it, it made sense. But I'm glad next time they're going to just, you keep your own team's players and you're assigning them throughout, which I think it makes it a bit more tactical, and it just makes that pairing system a bit easier to understand. So thank you very much to the organisers for, I think, listening to that feedback, which a few of the captains made. And I think that will make for a bit more of a fun pairing system, rather than having to worry about how it works and the tactics of it, you know, well, second guessing your opponent. It removes some of that and leaves it just with the tactical decision of who do we want to face.
Yeah, and it was interesting being on the other side as well, because the very first round we actually picked in advance, didn't we? We kind of had a bit of a
chat. Who do you want to play?
Yeah, and then on the next 2 rounds, we did it live there and then, because obviously the draw wasn't done until the games had finished, and we had a quick little powwow beforehand and little discussion. And to be honest, I think, as tactical as we might want to have been, we were very much like, that seems like a logical one. Yeah, if we can get that, that'd be great. I think we managed to get most rounds we got close to what we wanted. I don't think we ever got one where it came out and you're like, oh god, that's a shocker for me. Anth was easy to throw under a bus, to be honest, because he was like, I have no idea what I'm good against and what I'm not good against. But even then, I don't think he particularly came up against anything that we were sat there and said, if I was running Anth's list, I wouldn't want to play that.
Yeah. So Anth was running a Brotherhood Cabal mix, wasn't he?
Yes. I think he did Brotherhood for most of the games. I think he might have run Cabal in one of them.
Yeah, but I think he got decent matches for him. I definitely got decent matches for me. I got sort of people that, opponents. I thought, that roster, I can play against that. I think you did as well. The system, it's not that the system didn't work, and I think to be fair, if they had kept the system for the next tournament, I would go into it, if I was captain again, feeling a lot more confident.
Yeah, you get used to it. And this was the first team tournament any of us had done on any system. So it wasn't like we had a vast amount of experience. And it's something I've always wanted to do when we were doing AOS and team tournaments came up. And I was always like, I'd love to do it. And we just never got around to it. So it was a great time and a great experience. And thanks for taking the baton of being captain. I know there was a fair bit more organisation involved than a normal one. As you mentioned, I managed to win all 3, but it was a bit of a weird one in that I played the same set of characters in all 3 games. All 3 games were 19 threat.
Yeah.
I think the first 2 games was the same crisis combination of extracts and secures, and then the last one, I think it was the same extract but a different secure. And in fairness, my opponent that I played in the last game, I think he said he wasn't intending to play, and he got pulled in last minute, and he had been up most of the night, and you could tell he was absolutely shattered. So I got a little bit lucky in those circumstances, but I managed to play literally the same thing on all 3 games. And first game I tried it, I thought, well, we'll see how this goes, seems like a good matchup, and I was running again an Asgard Criminal Syndicate mix, and because it was 19 threat, I ran Thor, Valkyrie, Enchantress, Modok, and Okoye, which worked quite well. And then, because I think it was Panic and Demons Downtown.
Yeah, good mix.
So I was able to do quite well on the first one. Then the second one, again, it came out as Demons Downtown and Panic, and I was like, well, it worked well first time, let's see how it goes second time.
Give it a go again.
Yeah, and then the third one again was Demons Downtown, and I can't remember actually which way around it was, but I think it was Demons Downtown again, and again it was 19th round. I was like, well, crack on, let's see how that goes. But again, 3 great games, 3 great opponents. I think it was done in the right way. The team captains, in those games where we did the draw together, everybody just seemed to be there for a laugh and see how we could get on. And I, again, highly recommend those kind of things. So, as I say, none of us had any experience of doing team tournaments before. We kind of read the pack and went, yeah, it seems all right. You were good enough to put yourself forward as the captain. And overall, I think the key thing we're trying to get to here is highly recommend for anybody who's played on TTS or has access to TTS to get involved in these things, because it is a really good growing community. It's very welcoming. There isn't the stigma that's attached to tournaments. The way in which it's done with strength of schedule is the key thing. Again, we mentioned earlier, one of the benefits of that is that you don't have players that are just out to crush their opponent. That's not why they're there. They're not there just, all right, it's a newbie, this means I can get a 16-0 or whatever, let's just crush them. It's okay, fine, it's not going to help my strength of schedule, it is what it is, that's out of my hands. I'm going to make sure that they have a good game as much as I do. everybody's been fantastic, irrelevant of where they are on the MCP journey. I highly recommend it.
Absolutely, it's a great community. On the team tournament specifically, I think the week before there were a couple of people in the like the region-specific channel in the Discord server looking for an extra team member. So if for the next team tournament you are one team member short, or you are a single person wanting to take part but you can't get two people along, then absolutely post in there, and hopefully you might be able to get a team together. Really, really fun events. Thank you to the organisers. Must be a huge amount of work, but I mean they all run so seamlessly, and it's such a fun day. I think that the overwhelming feedback is hugely positive from those that take part. So absolutely encourage everyone to give it a go.
Yeah, it's a big shout out to Dr. Norbert. He's the person that seems to be running most of these. Norbert, the commissioner, on Discord. Absolutely, I think they say anybody who's not already on there, if you can get onto Discord, go and check out Marvel Crisis Protocol for TTS. It's the worldwide one, and then within there, once you're in, if you ask, you can get added to the relevant region. So for those in Europe, generally it's East GMT, and the way they do it is they essentially say if you want to play your games at 7 o'clock on that time for the league as such, 7 o'clock GMT time, fine. It doesn't restrict you. If you're in Australia and you, for whatever reason, prefer to play your games at 7 o'clock in the morning, then you can play the GMT one. Similarly, if you're in Europe and you prefer to play in the morning, you can join the Australian one. And I know there were a couple of Americans in one of the tournaments that I've done who, again, just the time suited their personal circumstances. So you can easily do that, and I would highly recommend just jumping onto that Discord chat. It's got a lot of information in there. There's a lot of channels there that I've muted literally everything because it is very busy, but it does give you that segue into the community and reach out to players of multiple levels. So highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Worth pointing out as well, I mean, there's always people looking for games in that server. So, even if you aren't bothered about tournaments or whatever, still join, you'll get some games in.
Absolutely. Again, as a community, I don't think we know what the standard is for tournaments, etc. And I think one of the good things about this is people are trying lots of different things to try and work out what do people like the most, and it's a very exciting time for Marvel Crisis Protocol. It's grown off the back of TTS. Yes, the models are fantastic, and yes, there's lots of people out there painting them, and there are some very lucky people who are actually getting the game in real life. But the community as a whole has been built off the back of TTS. Where it goes next is going to be fascinating. Are we going to see an explosion with people being able to play in real life? There's quite a few people I know who have kind of said, jump on TTS, I don't like computers, I don't have access, my internet's not fast enough for it. They're all people that are going to play in real life. Yeah, it's an exciting time. It's going to be interesting to see where does the community take events and tournaments going forward. And like I say, it's super excited to see where this lands up, and in 6 months' time we'll have a totally different view of it all.
Absolutely.
I still don't think there will be a standard even in 6-12 months' time. I think that's the beauty of this game, is it's so fresh and it's so new. It's only a year old. It's not stuck in those, we talk about the likes of AOS, etc. That's very much stuck in a standard tournament format. Whereas I think in MCP, because nobody really knows what the format is, it's very much like, do we just port the existing AOS format as such into it, or do we try and do something different? And a lot of the people that are playing at the moment, I've noticed a lot of the people that jumped on early are actually from other systems like War Machine Hordes, Guild Ball. A lot of the people we talked to in those first early tournaments that we played, it's people coming at it from different angles who've done things very differently.
Yeah, and you get so many different perspectives from that. It's really nice to see the different ways that different people approach the game.
Yep.
We're both coming at it, and most of our club mates are coming at it from Warhammer, specifically Age of Sigmar background. And I mean, there's lots of things that catch us out, like, there's no holy within divide, which was like, a huge thing that the two of us couldn't get our heads around for weeks.
Yeah.
I seem to remember when we were first playing. So it's really interesting to see like the different ways that people come at the game, and that's another great part about being a part of this big, large community.
It's a melting pot of ideas. So thank you very much, Thomas, for joining us on
Thank you for having me.
episode. Hopefully people found that useful and insightful, and it's inspired people to get onto TTS. I still think there is a life on TTS after we go back to playing in real life. I definitely will be still utilising TTS. Not as much, but I'll still definitely be utilising it for all the many benefits, and the fact that I can sit here and I can play somebody in Australia. That's absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely. That ability. I mean, again, if I was teaching someone, I think I'd still suggest that we jump onto the mod, onto TTS. It's really, really good. So there's definitely life in it, even after COVID, as that phrase begins to sound a bit more hopeful.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll bid you good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.